Nigeria is heading to Hobbesian state of nature. Ozodi Osuji. Response to Charles Chidi Ikado. I have been following your write-ups on the Nnamdi Kanu affair. Instead of trying to rebut you, point by point, I have decided to write from my stream of consciousness, to do free association and let how I really feel about something come to the fore. Make my apparent disjointed outpouring from my subconscious mind what you like. Here we go. You seem to understand formal public administration. You seem a bureaucrat, perhaps, a technolocrat but lacking in knowledge of real politics. I urge you to read Max Weber on Bureaucracy. Weber tried to make distinction between bureaucrats and politicians. You seem a bureaucrat but not a politician. The manner you are talking, sticking to bureaucratic rules and ignoring politics seem the surest way to lead Nigeria to war, but you do not seem to know it. Philosophers ponder on what makes for human society and peace in that society. If you did not take courses on political philosophy, go get the following books and read them, as soon as possible, before you get you and folks into trouble. Plato, The Republic. Aristotle, Politics. Books by Cicero, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius. Machiavelli, The Prince. Thomas Hobbes, Leviathan. John Locke, Second Treaty on Government. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Social Contract. Charles Montesquieu, Spirit of Laws. Karl Marx, Das Kapital. John Stuart Mill, On Liberty. Thomas Paine, Common Sense. Hamilton, Madison, and Jay, The Federalist Papers. A reading of those books will make you a political thinker, not a mere public bureaucrat. Peaceful living together of human beings is not obtained by only the exercise of power by those in power. Social harmony is based on many intangible factors that go beyond power, authority, and influence. I say this because in your tutorials on international relationships, by the way, there is no such thing as international laws yet, and what exists does not carry the weight of domestic laws, since there is no formal mechanism for implementing them, hence countries flout them, as Nigeria just flouted the law on extradition. I do not know who Nnamdi Kanu is. I am not an attorney and, as such, cannot write a legal brief on his behalf. Moreover, he is beside the point. The real point is what society is and how arbitrary exercise of political power by naive leaders initiate social instability and wars. What the unsophisticated politicians of Aso Rock just did has great potential to drag Nigeria into instability. Nnamdi Kanu should have been ignored. I, for example, ignored him because I saw him as a small fry who did not know a thing about politics. Sometimes, one should ignore certain irritants and not go after them if the consequence of doing so is to destabilize the human polity. The way Mr. Kanu was apprehended and jailed would make many IGBO'S mad. If you are a seasoned leader, you do not want a mad populace in your hands. Unless, of course, you are a stupid African leader who wants to spend the bulk of your national resources on putting out insurrections. In The State of Nature, Thomas Hobbes told us that people are self-interested. Each person looked after his personal affairs. People were essentially predatory animals. Powerful people exploited and/or enslaved weaker persons. A bunch of weak persons organized and warred with powerful persons. The result is that individuals were always at war with each other. The state of nature is characterized by perpetual wars, which Nigerian leaders in their immorality and lawless behaviors are about to stimulate, as we have seen happen in Somalia and South Sudan. In the state of nature all people lived at war and insecurity. To reduce their insecurity, they decided to form a commonwealth, a civil society. That meant forming a government. Government is given the authority to pass laws that all people obey for their own good. Obedience of laws in Nigeria is for the good of all Nigerians, not for the good of only Fulanis. Nigerian laws and public policies are supposed to protect all Nigerians and not to permit Fulanis to run roughshod on other ethnic groups, especially IGBO'S. If what is going on in Nigeria continues, IGBO'S can decide that the government and laws of Nigeria do not protect them and engage in civil disobedience, that is, disregard the Abuja government. If most IGBO'S decide to disregard the government of Nigeria, then what? The Nigerian government would start killing IGBO'S, right? IGBO'S would fight back even if their hands were tied behind their backs. Ultimately, what we would have is genocide, kind of like what happened in Rwanda when the Hutus government killed Tutsis in the 1990s. And what do you think would happen if IGBO'S saw Fulanis committing pogrom and genocide in Igbo? Do you believe that they would kick back, drink whiskey and have sex with their women and say that life is good? I can see Nigeria become the testing grounds for chemical and biological warfare, and even primitive nuclear warfare. For what it is worth, let me state that I personally would not hesitate to destroy all Nigerians rather than permit the perpetual rule of Fulanis over IGBO'S. Nigerians are probably better off dead than be unable to govern themselves right and being a people known only for their thieving behaviors and engaging in social and economic injustices. The point is that Nigeria would become a free-for-all environment where all killed all, and your belief that the Nigerian government has the right to kidnap a person at will is justified would yield unintended consequences for all Nigerians. John Locke, in his second treatise on government, made it abundantly clear that the people set up government and delegate certain powers to it. Those powers are limited in scope. If the government goes beyond the amount of power given to it, the people will rise in protest. You saw what happened on January 6, 2021, at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. Many conservatives believe that the liberals in America are using government to superimpose all kinds of weird values on them. These days all kinds of sexual practices are not only accepted as normal but mandatorily taught to 6-year-old school children as appropriate behaviors. Christian evangelicals are boiling in anger and rage. If you are politically perspicuous, you would expect other violent attempts to overthrow the U.S. government if it continues on its present liberal trajectory. As of today, 28 states have passed laws limiting voting rights in the USA, and if the trend continues, perhaps 40 states would do so by the end of this year. Conservative America wants to take back its government from liberal nihilists that believe that all behaviors are permissible. The point is that many Americans feel that they are not listened to by their government, hence they're pivoting to an authoritarian government that would, at least, pretend to do their will. IGBO'S do not believe that the Abuja, Fulani government listens to them. When a people feel that their government does not listen to them, they begin acting out, trying to destroy that government. Jean-Jacques Rousseau told us that the people's will is the only determiner of a government's legitimacy. If a people, or a section of the people, decides that the government does not represent them, they see that government as illegitimate and will do whatever they can to destroy it, even if the rulers, like Fulanis, believe in their divine right to rule Nigerians. Like those motivated by desire for raw power, Fulanis listen to Machiavelli and figure out ways to manipulate the people and their rulers to be in power. Igbo governors and legislators, we all know, are in the pocket of Fulanis. Give those pathetic folks a few dollars and they sell their parents down the river. Was it not only yesterday that Africans were selling their brothers and sisters into slavery? Africans are known for their penchant for selling their people to Romans, Arabs, and Europeans. In the past 2,000 years, what have they done but sell their people to any willing buyers? Remove Western laws that outlaw slavery, and Africans would gladly resume selling their people, again, and blame those they sold them to, white men, for their African iniquity. They want the white man to pay reparations to the slaves they bought to do their work, but do not see that they, too, need to pay reparations to those they sold into slavery, or make serious amends, render contrite apologies for their criminal behavior of selling their people. As we talk, Africans kidnap their people for monetary ransom and use some of them for rituals to make money. Conscience is underdeveloped in these sociopathic people. They lack strong sense of guilt and remorse when they do wrong things. They are amoral, as Machiavelli encouraged them to be. John Mill, Jeremy Bentham and other British utilitarian philosophers told us that public policies must serve community interests. The individual feels pain and pleasure. He knows what gives him pain and pleasure. You aggregate the people's, the community's notion of what gives them pleasure into public policies. In On Liberty, John Stuart Mill said that free men must fight for their liberty or die fighting for it. Thomas Paine said the same thing in his book, Common Sense. In fact, the reason why John Stuart Mill saw Africans as subhuman beings is that, in his view, they do not rise and fight for their liberty. They tolerate slavery without fighting for liberty. In Nigeria the people tolerate their mostly kleptocratic rulers without rising to fight them. The slave is culprit in his slavery. If he desires liberty, he must fight his slave master, and the slave master wishing to live rather than die at the hands of his slaves will rearrange his relationship with his workers. It is slaves' tolerance of slavery that makes slavery possible. Slaves tolerate slavery because they love life so much that they want to live at all costs. They are afraid of death. In the Republic, Plato noted that the citizens of a republic gather and discuss the form of government and laws they desire, and discuss concepts of social and economic justice, and generally train leaders, philosopher kings, who would implement into public policies what they deem appropriate governance. If you go outside what the people want, you risk war, as the arrogant but unintelligent rulers of Nigeria have been asking for in a long time. Aristotle reminds us that politics is inevitable in the human polity. Free men gather and discuss how to govern their society and obey the laws they made. If people are no longer permitted to participate in politics, in the governance of their society, they begin seeking ways to change that society. Nnamdi Kanu believes that IGBO'S are not part of the governing circle of Nigeria and feels angry at the situation. I do not know what the man's politics is, but I understand his angst, and that anger should not be treated cavalierly, as Africans do hence find themselves in perpetual social conflicts. I am a social democrat. I desire a mixed capitalist and socialist political economy. If a government does not incline to providing publicly paid education at all levels for all youth and provide health insurance for all, I fully support the violent overthrow of that government, for it is an oppressive government. This is a statement of principle. Certain ideas, political ideology, if you like, are worth fighting and dying for. Nigerians apparently do not care for political ideologies and merely go to government to steal as much money as they could from it, but not to use government to accomplish goals and objectives for the people. In The Spirit of Laws, Montesquieu talked about how to obtain democracy and prevent tyranny. He believed that man is inherently inclined to seeking tyrannical power over other men, so, to prevent him from becoming a tyrant, you must divide government into three branches, namely, legislative, executive and judiciary, and have all three be in adversarial relationships, fighting each other, and that is the only way we can obtain liberty in the human polity. In Nigeria, power is concentrated in the hands of a few Fulanis, and they pretty much do as they like, including have their cattle herdsmen go about slaughtering farmers and villagers, and the man at Also Rock seems in cahoots with his people and say nothing about what is going on. Nigeria is now a slave plantation. Nigerians are Fulani slaves. If this situation does not change, kidnapping and incarcerating Nnamdi Kanu would not solve the problem. Indeed, all that would happen is that Mr. Kanu becomes a martyr for his followers. He becomes a saint they pray to guide them in their struggle for liberty. Every political movement needs saints. Hitherto, IGBO'S lack saints. Kanu could become one, rallying IGBO youth around his beliefs, such as they are. Let me make it crystal clear that I do not support Kanu's efforts to balkanize Nigeria. In books and countless articles, I elaborated on what Africans, if they were intelligent, would have done, upon obtaining their independence from Europeans. They would have made each large ethnic group a state and given them some autonomy, and then have the central government coordinate their affairs. This is in alignment with what folks call true federalism, as obtains in the USA. Such political arrangement would lead to peace. The Carthaginian peace of the graveyard that we currently see in Nigeria is not desirable, for only slaves live in such a graveyard. You have been waxing strong on the difference between interception, extradition, repatriation, the role of the passport a person is carrying when he is interdicted. I do not know what passport Nnamdi Kanu was carrying when he was kidnapped by agents of the Nigerian state. That passport is irrelevant to me. What is relevant is his human liberty. Let us assume that he was carrying a Nigerian passport. Does that justify kidnapping him, as he allegedly was kidnapped in Kenya? Does the Kenyan government have the right to arrange to have him detained and give him over to the Nigerian government, knowing that he probably faces torture and death? Yes, Kanu made a mistake in skipping bail, but does two wrongs make a right? If kidnapping and jailing political opponents are tolerated, what prevents, say, the Tanzanian government from detaining you the next time you are in their country and handing you over to, say, communist North Korea, a country that believes that people like you are the lackeys of the capitalist West and are responsible for their penury, and would like to jail you? Would that action be right? I am not a spring chicken, nor am I sentimental. I am a clear-eyed political realist in the mode of Metternich, Otto von Bismarck, Pareto, Joseph Schumpeter, Edward Carr, and Henry Kissinger. I understand that power rules this world. The United States government had issues with Osama bin Laden and went to Pakistan and killed him and dumped his body into the ocean. The United States government have its allies kidnap those it deems its enemies and take them to friendly countries where they are tortured for information, policy of rendition. Indeed, it took some of those it calls captured terrorists to Guantanamo in Cuba, a part of Cuba it keeps to itself after the War of 1898 when America used the ruse of Spanish authorities firing on a U.S. ship, the Maine, to attack Spain and defeated it and took over Cuba, Puerto Rico, Philippines, and other Spanish territories. Power rules the world, but does that make it right? In IQ testing, most Africans score at low average, 85, or mental retardation, under 70, hence many non-Africans consider Africans born idiots. The average white score is 100, the average Asian score is 115. This pattern is replicated in Africans' low scores on the SAT, blacks' average score is 850, whites 1150 and Asians 1250, out of total marks of 1600. James Watson, the co-discoverer, with Francis Crick, of the DNA said that Africans are too unintelligent to be able to rule themselves well. We see this negative assessment of Africans play out before our eyes all over Africa, over and over, again. Are Nigerians able to govern themselves right, and if so, would they have done what they did to Kanu, elevating a non-entity to superstar status? If the criminal denizens of Abuja continue doing what they are currently doing, a critical mass point will be reached, at which point most IGBO'S would prefer death to living as slaves. The result is that Nigerians would start killing IGBO'S indiscriminately and IGBO'S would defend themselves with their machetes. Nigeria would revert to a state of nature. Those IGBO'S with skills on how to kill people in the mass will deploy their skills on Nigeria. It is folks like you who rationalize African government's injustices that tend to bring about what you are trying to prevent, mass murder. I suggest that on the Nnamdi Kanu issue you become a bit more circumspect. Your relentless defense of the thieves of Abuja sufficiently irritated me that I decided to write from my stream of consciousness, hence throw caution to the winds and say what is in my mind. I do not support any effort to dismantle Nigeria, or any other African country. I want a rearrangement of their structures and patterns of governance. What currently exists in Nigeria does not make for anyone's liberty and or encourage economic development. I have already devoted over an hour to this writing and must stop. I hope that you have learned something from the piece despite its rambling quality. Ozodi Osuji. July 1, 2021.